Hi, this is Rebecca Martin Fagerholm. I am so excited about our producer panel today. We've got a dream team, and before we get started, I wanted to kind of make some introductions, and then they'll all come up. So our panelists today are Rhianon Jones from Neon Heart Productions, Shun Babalola, her organization is KOSINIMA Inc. And then Flor Tejadda, she's done several shorts and, she's doing a lot of exciting projects. And her recent film I got to see at the New Orleans Film Festival is Bone Black Midwives versus the South, and it won a special award there. And Liz Cardenas, she's back. We had an amazing tribute Q&A with her for our 2022 festival. So yeah, this is a great group. And unfortunately, we were going to have Elizabeth Woodward from Willa and Natalie Metzger from Vanishing Angle, but they had some commitments. But I'm glad we're a smaller group today. So before I bring them up, I'm just going to read some quotes because I've interviewed them all except Flor, and I went to a panel and stole something she said from that. But yeah, so the first quote is from Flor. She said, "I really started thinking about creative nonfiction in a way I related to in like literary form, essays, poems, and personal memoirs. I felt that there is something that is really artistic and poetic and diverse in creative nonfiction that I think is unique in what we're trying to do." And I believe that was based on her work with Bone Black Midwives versus the South. And just a little more info about Flor. She's produced branded content and nonfiction shorts for Condé Nast, Vox Creative, Time Inc., Tribeca Studios, P&G, and many more. And yeah, like I said, her short film has won many awards. Rhianon Jones, I've interviewed her several times. A quote from her is when I asked her what advice she would give emerging filmmakers, and she said, "The only difference between someone who makes films and someone who doesn't make films is that one person made a film. They're not magical, they're not smart, they're not stronger or more creative. If you can just get out there and do it, you can make a film." And she's done some of my favorite films like Shiva Baby, Palm Trees and Power Lines. And I recently saw Tenda Berry at this year's Sundance, and I was blown away from that. And Neon Heart Productions is an independent film company, and it provides mentorship and limited financing for female filmmakers. And then I'll try to get through these last two quickly so we can get to the discussion. Shun said in an interview I did with her about her project, Frederick Douglass in 5 Speeches, many people are very hesitant to speak up for many reasons. They fear for their lives. What could happen? What would topple? Many things in this world would be different if people would just say what's on their mind. And I love that quote. Going to Liz Cardenas, she said, we were talking about her film 7 Days that she did with Duplass Brothers. And she said about her style of producing, she said, "How do I best get the director's vision to come across on screen with the parameters we have?" That's a question she was asking, which is typically budgetary. That's when you're choosing, like, we can't do it this way. Let's come up with an idea that's less expensive or a different approach. But I'm always trying to keep thinking about the vision and also the safety and health and the well-being of the cast and crew. And I love that, especially in respects to the recent, a couple of years ago, Helena Hutchins passing, and we actually have a producer award in her name. So with that long-winded intro, how about you all come up and we'll get started in the discussion.
Hello. I was really afraid of what quote you were going to choose, but
yeah, it was a good one. I was like, yeah, I mean, it was a very powerful interview. So, I've already introduced you, but if you want to say your name and recent project again, you can, and share why you got into producing in the first place. Shun, we'll start with you.
Sure. So my whole name is Oluwaseun Babalola, but Sean for short, that's fine. And I am a filmmaker, producer, television producer, and film producer. And I'm also a nonprofit founder and executive director of KOSINIMA Inc. So my most recent project, I feel like I'm always juggling multiple projects at a time. So I would say my most recent producing project is a series for AMC called You Are Here, which was starring Coleman Domingo. And KOSINIMA Inc. is an organization that I founded that is to support Black creatives around the globe with funding and kind of networking support. So what that means is that I run two grant funds for Black Femme filmmakers. One is a partnership with the Film Festival in Botswana for female screenwriters, and the other is a short film grant fund that funds short film. All you have to be is 18 or over, identifies Black, and identifies Femme. And so that has funded 8 films so far. And so working on screening them, and yeah, just here to support the cause. I think you asked too what made me want to produce. You know,
Yep,
I've been
that's it.
I've been thinking about this because before, so I'm a very like I've always done like my own films and made my own work. Like that's how I actually started. And I didn't know that what I was doing was under the producer title until I started working in like the formal way of producing, where people are just like, you're a producer. And I'm like, but this is just getting the film done. So I think it just came natural to me in that sense, where I'm just like, okay, well, logistically, I need to do this, this, and that. And then I need to reach out to this person, especially working in documentary. It was just like, 1, 2, 3. So I guess what's inspired me has just always been in me. It's just come natural. And so it just kind of fell into place. And I guess that's an answer.
Great. It's a good answer. Flor?
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm Flor Tejadda. I'm a documentary producer, editor, shooter, director, filmmaker, I guess I'll say. Um, let's see. Right now, I'm currently a Sundance Documentary Producers Fellow with my first feature called Wild Darlings Sing the Blues. And it's a song of freedom, directed by Nova Scott James. And I have a current short film in the festival scene at the moment. It's actually a fiction film, short narrative called Harlem Fragments, directed by Cameron Tyler Carr. And I have another short that I post-produced with Amani Dennison, who directed Bone Black. And that film will be coming out later this year, and it's called The People Could Fly. And also developing a bunch of other projects, but that's for another conversation. Yeah, I think when I decided to start producing late in my film school career, I was mostly shooting and editing, and was graduating during a time where it was like there was definitely some concern about the career trajectory of filmmakers. It was like a bad financial time. It was like a slow industry time. And so I was like, I should figure out how to like know how to make things myself. And so at the time, NYU Tisch had just launched their producing minor. And so I just decided very, very last minute to take it. And that's when I was like, okay, there's a value here to learning like the business aspect or how to like create things on my own. And so once I graduated, yeah, I just started, I was working in post, but then I decided to really start producing my own content. So I did have a production company for 10 years, where I was mostly focusing on branded content. And somewhere along that journey, I said, my heart was always in producing documentary films. And so that's the journey I've been on for the past 5 years. Yeah.
All right, Rhianon?
So we have a bunch of movies coming out with Neon Heart. We have 6 films that we had some backup from. First it was COVID and then it was the strikes. So it's a busy summer for us. And then we have 2 or 3 films that are in development that are like the lower budget films that we specialize in, like director's first films or second films that we'll probably shoot this summer. And then we have some bigger budget things that we were developing in-house. You know, there's Flor that I actually wrote and my producing partner Tristan produced. So those are at a little bit bigger budget because we're trying to sort of help build the pipeline. You know, we did Shiva Baby and then Emma went off and did Bottoms without us. I think maybe we could try to do the Bottoms to everyone's Shiva Baby to help that pipeline because it's really like, that's when they get paid. You know, you don't get paid for the Shiva Babies and that's when you get like a real career and you can lift everyone up with you, which is like the goal. So we've been kind of working on that. Obviously, it's a like pretty weird time in the industry to be doing this stuff, but there are successes here and there. As for my own journey with producing, you know, I produced my own stuff. And when I kind of looked at where I was a direct, you know, writing and directing, my background is actually in writing. When I looked at where I kind of stalled out, I was like, I was kind of missing this support and someone saying like, yes, you can do it. And I was like, what if I could be that to other people, you know? And I'm also like super cheap. Like I love to do, I'm like, I will make the props myself. I will bring you food. Like I will like cook the crafty, like, so we have this very get it done attitude, but I feel like there's so many people who are like told that the system is like there and that they can't, if they can't climb it the way they're supposed to climb it, then they're never going to get in. I'm like, no, you can go in this back door where you do it yourself and you can get it done. Like we did Shiva Baby for like ultra low budget and you know, it was a big success and launched the careers of like 5 different people. So that's kind of our niche. And Tristan, my producing partner, is not here right now. He's also like a filmmaker. So we've produced each other's shorts and features and stuff. So we have that sort of get it done attitude. So we just want to like, we're like, if you have 200,000, that's really like $1 million if you have a lot of favors and you work really hard and you get that script really good ahead of time. So yeah.
That's great. I love that, Rhianon. Liz?
Like so many of my esteemed fellow panelists, you know, we all have these unique backgrounds. I consider myself a storyteller in that I write, I direct, I act, and I produce. I've had most of my success as a producer, but I actually started off as a journalist and was pursuing acting. And then I stumbled into producing. I was actually acting in something, and it was, you know, a low budget indie film where it's very collaborative and team oriented. And so I started going to all the meetings and then I'd be like, I can get this, I can do this. And so over the course of the film, they're like, you should get a producer credit. And at that time, I didn't even kind of know what a producer did, but I loved the empowering feeling that I got with helping really actually make something happen, as opposed to just hoping that I would get cast in something or somebody would buy my script. So I guess that's when I had that kind of bug. And I realized that my skill set as a reporter translated to producing, which so often is the case that people, you know, become a producer after doing other things. I love making movies and telling stories. And I have a production company called 10 to the 6 Pictures. It's just kind of just me. You know, some of the notable films I've worked on as a producer is David Lowery's A Ghost Story, Augustine Frizzell's Never Going Back, which were both A24 films. You mentioned 7 Days, which we won Best First Feature at the Spirit Awards. And I was nominated for the Producer Award at the Spirit Awards. But I'm about to direct my first feature, which I'm super excited about because I've directed some shorts. My most recent project, because I've got several, you know, in various stages of development and post-production and so forth, but is Harula Rose's All Happy Families, which
Yes.
I know we're doing a special thing with Harula.
Yes, we
as
did
part of
a tribute event with her.
Tribute,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
And which I was so fortunate to work with Rhianon on.
That's one of our many films coming out this summer.
Yes, I mean Neon Heart, like it was like I'll look at films and then I'm like, oh, of course Neon Heart is on that one. Like this is a film I love. Like I would just read about it, know the filmmaker, see it, and then of course it's a Neon Heart film. So it was great
It was very fun to work together.
Yeah, that's so great. I love the collaborative process, and I feel like a skill as a producer from talking to many producers at this point is thinking outside the box and just thinking of a creative way to make it work. So I either, you know, in one of your like documentary or narrative film, I was wondering if each of you could share an experience where you had to creatively solve a problem or a challenge. I won't call it a problem. Let's call it a challenge on one of, you know, your projects. It could be a recent project, or it could be when, you know, your very first project. Shun, can you get it started?
I'm like trying to narrow it down because I feel like every project I've worked on, I've had to pivot and
Yeah.
create something. Um, yeah, can I think about that for a second?
Yes,
'Cause I'm trying to like
yeah,
also
it's
not
a
expose
tough one.
people.
I decided to go with the hard questions in the beginning, but you know, we can come back to you.
Come back to me. I'll have one.
Yeah, Flor.
Yeah, I think with every project there comes so many challenges, and you always have to be thinking like, what is the creative solve here? But one I'll say that I guess is pretty like practical is for Bone Black, we had to create these scenes, a lot of them, you know, magical realism, that, you know, it was a hybrid documentary. We were already tight on our budget because we shot in 6 different states. We shot also in Ghana, and so we were spending a lot of money on just transporting crew. And with these locations, we were like, how are we going to pull that off? So really it ended up being about finding a sound stage, which sound stages are expensive, and I had to really negotiate like, can you cut us a deal so that we could use this stage to essentially shoot 4 different sets. And we had all hands on deck, you know, people arting and moving lights and just making sure that we could get it done in 2 days, because that's really all that we could afford. But it ended up being a good solve, and we figured out like how to design those scenes to work within this one larger space. Yeah.
That's great. Rhianon?
This is really hard.
I know,
You know,
you've done
part
so
of what's
many
hard is that
films.
I think every aspect of filmmaking is a creative solution. So like my first thought is like, there was a moment with Shiva Baby where, you know, I'm a little bit older than the women who made it. And I was like, the scene is not really working for me. And I was just like, you just need like one shot of her looking like she's digesting the information. And I feel like it would change. And for me, it like changed the whole movie. And I was like, okay, now it's making sense. And it was like, sort of the last edit that they made. They're like, okay, well, we'll do this change for you. And I was like, for me, it made like so much more sense. And like,
Yeah.
but I go back to like my early films where I was like, this character is supposed to be getting out a piece of like American cheese slice that's like gone bad. And I made one out of cardboard and I painted it to look like cheese. I was like so proud of myself. And I was like, I'm doing everything. And like, we didn't even end up filming like the scene with the cardboard cheese, but I was like very proud of my skills,
Yeah.
production design. But as far as like on the ground problem solving, I'm lucky that like right now where I'm at with the company, like, well, like on Korobora, we had to like sort of change the lyrics to songs and stuff where I was like the writer, but I'm doing a lot of prep stuff here. Like I spend a lot of time on script development, and I spend a lot of time in the edit. I don't spend a lot of time on set, especially since I'm in upstate New York and I have young kids, some that are, you know, stuff shooting in Toronto, New York, wherever. So I can't always be on set. So my creativity I get a chance before it films and after it films, and then in between I'm just kind of like fingers crossed. It's like hope you figure it out. But yeah.
That's great. Liz?
Like everyone has stated, like every movie has the obstacles that you have to overcome. And I will say, kind of in general, I always tell people to like lean into the community for, you know, where you're filming and for support. But specifically, the first thing that popped in my head when you asked, you know, was with regards to 7 days, because we filmed that in September of 2020, which was crazy, like hardcore COVID. And we all felt super grateful to be able to get kind of back to making art and back to set. But, you know, as a producer, as you know, when you said my quote about the safety of the cast and crew. So it was this combination of really being smart about having limited money, and then also having a smaller crew and having a contained place and then a short number of days was both beneficial financially, like in terms of budget, but then also safety. And when, when you're a small film and you don't have a big budget, you can't shut down. You can't lose days. And so the longer we were filming, we knew the greater the chance of someone getting COVID and having a problem.
Yeah.
So what we did was we filmed in the desert. So we filmed away from everyone. We all quarantined in advance. We had all of our production assistants outside of, like, not all of them. We had one in the bubble, but then we kind of considered ourselves a bubble. So then we had PAs outside of the bubble. We had our production designers set up the world, but then, before we got there. And so we really didn't have production design on set. And then we shot with 2 cameras so that we could really shoot in shorter amount of days. So it was a way to kind of think both creatively, logistically at the same time to make the most of this kind of difficult situation. But then because of the constraints, it really created this really family environment and collaboration where we're all like all hands on deck, and so that was one of the things of like really trying to be mindful on many different aspects to create a really quality film, but with limited resources and these things associated. But
yeah. I love that film, by the way. It's a great one. Shun?
Oh yeah. Okay. So no, it's funny you say that because I was thinking of In Five Speeches, which we also shot during COVID.
Yes.
And so I was like drafting like floor plans of like, where's the airflow coming from? But outside of that, I mean, I was thinking of just like, so much of being a producer is also learning how to juggle different personalities. And so one thing that stands out to me is I was doing an episode of United Shades of America, and we were shooting in Skid Row. And so on that particular day, a PA crashed a car, and then also there was a drive-by shooting, and there was like a couple other things going on. And so it's like the thought process of having to not even process all of these things happening and just seeing how you can solve them is what really sticks out, where it's just like, okay, I'm going to take this car, you take this car to the Target, replace this drive-by. What street is this on? We're not going to shoot on that street anymore. We're going to shoot on this street. And then so that's like, so to say that is just to say, like, I feel like every project really does have the elements of having to pivot, but those 2 definitely stick out, just like In Five Speeches with COVID, and then the Skid Row episode, because that was just very, very chaotic with like literally hundreds of people out that day too when we were shooting. So
yeah. And then I'm just going to add one for you, Shun, because you shared this with me in our interview. You were talking about getting the actors to read the speeches for Frederick Douglass, and you were the one instrumental in bringing, I'm probably going to get her name wrong, but Nicole Bahari.
Nicole Bahari.
Yeah. And then the other guy who was really good, Andre Holland, like these people that are amazing. And what's his face who just won the Oscar? See, I'm like blanking.
You're blanking, Jeffrey Wright.
Yes, there we go. I should have wrote this down. But can you just touch on that real quick?
Yeah. So the film is Frederick Douglass in Five Speeches, which is an HBO film. And so with historical films, I mean, when I approach documentary, I just really don't want to make things that are just run of the mill, where it's like talking heads. Those are fine, but I want to make something exciting. So the director and I, Julia Marchese, we were trying to figure out like how to make this different from the rest. So aside from the animations and the other storytelling elements, I was thinking to myself, okay, we always have the same people narrating the same historical documentaries all the time. Like, we're not going to put Morgan Freeman in this. So what we could do is get really exciting, awesome actors that I enjoy, that people don't usually see in this type of realm, who can hold the screen and who can really have a commanding presence, because due to COVID, our solution was to just have people in these vast spaces that were just like a stage where they would just do his speeches as a monologue. So it was just them standing in this room. So like, who could we get? And so I've been a fan of Nicole Beharie for a really long time. I just think she's an incredible actress. And so I was just like, you know what, I called it like from behind the scenes, I was calling it like hashtag Operation Beharie because I just like really wanted to get her in this. And thankfully she said yes. And thankfully they all said yes because also it's a risk. There was no vaccine at the time and we didn't really know what was going on with COVID. But I just really wanted to feature people who were just like not who had the talent and who could hold the screen, but they just like weren't who you would normally expect to be doing this. So we got Coleman Domingo, Jeffrey Wright, Nicole Beharie, Denzel Whitaker, and Jonathan Majors, and they did phenomenal jobs.
Yeah,
you know, with all of the speeches.
Yeah, that's so great. And did any of you, I mean, we're kind of already getting to time. Are you guys okay sticking around a few more minutes? Okay, okay. Yes. It won't go over too much longer. I was just curious if any of you wanted to comment on, casting, because that's a big part, obviously, of putting a film together. And, that's what draws people to go to see the film. So, Flor, do you have any experience with casting for your films?
Sure. And
Yeah.
I'll speak to documentary because I think with documentary you don't necessarily think of casting in the way that you would a narrative film, but yeah, it's really important to just feel really connected to who your subjects are and know that they are telling their story and they're unfolding in such a way that they're very much collaborators. And I think, negotiating what boundaries look like and how long, are you going to be in this project for? Because as you know, especially with features, it can take several years to get a documentary feature completed. So it's really about just making sure managing expectations and making sure people know every step of the way what's happening. I think, being in a documentary, you're in a vulnerable position. You're having you're sharing your life. People are witnessing you. And so I just think just having a lot of communication up front, being super transparent, and always just keeping them updated throughout the process so that they can feel engaged. And I think when I've just started production on a new feature and I've just been thinking I need to be really engaged with what they're doing because now I'm dedicating, several years of my life until telling their story. So where is my natural curiosity about them? And engaging doesn't necessarily mean it looks different for everyone. What are they up to in life? What are their core values? What do they believe in? But for me, there has to be that something that I'm like, okay, I'm about to be on this journey with you and really go down this road that I think could be it's like, who knows? I don't know what our relationship is going to look like 2 years from now. I don't know how your life is going to unfold 2 years from now, but having that spark of knowing that we're collaborators and having a lot of transparent conversations is super important in casting when considering casting for documentaries.
Yeah, that's great. And then Rhianon and Liz in the narrative world, did you want to comment on casting?
Well, I will weigh in just on the advice side. Normally Neon Heart, we don't really care about casting because we're these are low budget films. It's really about the director and getting their voice out. But when I was talking earlier about building that bridge, I do see that there is a connection between a highly motivated cast, like Rachel, who was in Shiva Baby, was doing a lot of stuff. She was really on the cusp of things, and obviously she's doing really well now, which it really helps. So you want if you can't get a star, someone who's at least got a lot of irons in the fire and is really pursuing it is important, because we're finding in these sales conversations, and we're always looking to how are you going to get your second film? We'll help you do the first one, but we want to build your career because we want to tilt the scale so that it's more female voices out there. And the cast stuff has started to become more important just because the as Liz knows, we've been on many sales calls together for this project, that it's tricky and it's kind of confusing. I say you always like go with the person who's right for the project for sure, but understand the implications that it's not. And I've been reading scripts lately where I'm like, okay, I could see how this would work with like Sydney Sweeney or like some big person. And otherwise, I don't know how it would like lift off the ground, even though it's like a decent script. So I've actually, instead of the just get it done attitude I've had in the past, lately I've been a little bit more conscious about like the cast, and it could just be like a total weirdo standout person too, you know, but like being innovative and creative with your casting and like taking risks, but also understanding what those risks are. You know, it's a complicated and really important part of the filmmaking process, which I'm sure Liz can weigh in on that as well.
It's so funny because saying it's a really important and also kind of complicated part. It's so, I mean, you said it perfectly. Because casting is so important, but I feel like, and typically when I talk, I cater what I say to the audience who I'm speaking to. So if I'm talking to emerging filmmakers, then I'm going to be talking more about, again, like Rhianon was saying, your first feature, first or second feature, lower budget, you know, obviously. And so there's some things that I've learned along the way that I think could be useful in that, you know, number one, yes, having recognizable talent helps. However, unless you get the bigger name, it doesn't make that much difference. And the amount of stress and pressure that it puts on production on a lower budget film, you could have spent more time in really working with your actors, having better shots, taking more time. And so it's this balance of really being mindful of the talent or the name that you're getting. Does it really have a payoff? Or maybe be selective about one actor, and then the rest you're getting really talented actors who don't have the name, because then it's going to not take away so much from like production and other elements. You know, and then the other thing too is if you are trying to attract some names for your film and you're more emerging, think about who would want to play this role. You know, who as a person, as a human being, maybe in their life has this mission that aligns with the story that you're trying to tell. When you want whoever is the right actor or actress for the role creatively for the film. That's the most important thing. But also then if you're trying to attract bigger names and you are a smaller film, you're a more emerging filmmaker, is there a way that there is an actor that, like I said, who aligns with the story you're trying to tell? Because that's the way that you might be able to get interest. Is there a pivotal role that maybe doesn't take so many days so that they can commit to the project, because they're not going to be in every single scene and throughout the whole movie? And lastly, the big question is always, you know, do you try to get an attachment and then raise money, or are you raising money and then you can make the offer? But knowing that you're going to get more people to say yes to the film if you are financed and you can actually say this is what the offer is, than just make an attachment. But that's kind of the always the big question that we're always facing, and there's not an exact answer.
I hope you guys don't mind my supers coming in to fix something, which is really bad timing. But I'm just going to ask one more question and then I'm going to put my mute on. Are you guys okay with one more?
Yeah.
Okay. So since this is a short film festival, and I know that all of you worked on shorts in some way, can you talk about producing films in the short form? Liz, I remember from our interview, you were talking about never going back, how you made a feature and then you made a short and then you made another feature of the same film. And I was like, oh my God, that must have been a headache. And then Flor, I just loved hearing about your process as a creative producer and how you were, wanting to connect with the material in a different way. And Rhianon, As They Slept is an amazing film with Maya Hawke. And then Shun, I know you've done short films and like TV series with like Soju and then your recent project. So can you guys speak to the short form? And I'm gonna, let whoever wants to step up first can speak.
I'm happy.
Oh, go ahead.
to stress when you were talking about the story. And the reason I like telling that story is I feel like it illustrates this idea that mistakes can be opportunities to learn, failures are opportunities for growth. And so to kind of have that mindset. So when I filmed a feature called Never Going Back. It didn't come out exactly like we wanted. We kind of rushed into production, and it was tiny, tiny, tiny budget. And so then we ended up cutting the feature down to a short. And that premiered at South by, and we got a lot of positive feedback from it. And through that process, we ended up spending a year doing rewrites of the actual feature script and reshooting the entire movie. And so what was initially a failure turned into a success. And had we not taken the time to do all that, the actual film would not have premiered at Sundance and been nominated for a Spirit Award. Not everybody has the luxury to do that. I understand that that was huge opportunity. But I do think short films, in addition to being an art form in and of themselves, and a complicated one to nail, that there's so many different reasons to make a short film. It can be proof of concept for the feature. It can be a calling card for a filmmaker. In another film, I did an indigenous short film that was qualified for the Oscars, and Eva Longoria was an EP on it. That was always meant as not a proof of concept, but development for the feature, because we were getting to know, we filmed on a Native American reservation, and we were getting to really know the community and learning their stories. And we knew all that information was going to go into the feature. And then another project that I'm a producer on that's Sundance supported, it's a Cuban film. The short was meant for the director, because she's got a theater background, to make mistakes, so that she would know what to do on the feature version. So there's many different reasons to do a short that I think are all fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, no, I was just, you said it all, but I think it's very, like, I'm in post for a short that I wrote and directed and produced. And that was strategic. And I've done documentary shorts, like 20 of them in the form of like series. And so I think it's really interesting that this industry puts so much emphasis on making a short film, because it could be your calling card or it could be your proof of concept. And, you can get further in your career with it, but there's also not a lot of resources to make one. So access and resource is a really big thing in terms of making a short film, because not everybody can make one, and it's really expensive to do filmmaking in general. And so, yeah, I think short films are actually really important. That's primarily why I started the short film grant funds, because there are very few short film grants out there. And then even fewer go to Black filmmakers, fewer go to women filmmakers, fewer go to African outside of the West filmmakers. And so it's just like, okay, so who actually gets to get their foot in the door using this medium? Who actually gets to tell their story using this medium? And so short films are great. I think they're incredibly powerful. I think they're incredibly useful. But I think we should start also thinking about, not just like we here, but just everyone. It's just like, how are we actually elevating and uplifting people who make short films, because it can be considered its own kind of lane, actually. Maybe standalones, not always a proof of concept, or not always, yes. Something else. So it's interesting to think about, but yeah, short films are great. I don't know, thumbs up.
I do think that
I lost my way.
I think that the short to feature pipeline is actually still like the best way for people who don't have a lot of access, because we used to do short films as well, sort of as development for features at Neon, but it ended up being so much work. We're like, we could actually do, and sometimes as much money, like we have some short films that cost as much as features that we did, like ultra low budget features. So we switched to just doing features, because we're like, if you're going to go through all this effort, and you might as well have a film out of it. But I do think, as advice for like filmmakers, that the reason why shorts are so good for getting your feature is it shows like you can tell a story from beginning to end. And there's so many people who have great ideas for features and stuff, about like I still don't see in the script like a story being told from beginning to end. And I can see 1 minute movie that tells me that everything about how a person can change in 1 minute, like, and that's really meaningful. And I think when it comes to investors, people investing their time, their money, the energy, the industry, and audiences, people, like, we underestimate them all the time. They want that human connection. So if you can show in a short that you can connect on a human level and show, which, big thing, especially in American or Western filmmaking, is like that human growth, like, is really like resonance or a hero's journey. It's meaningful to the audience. Like, you're there to communicate that idea. And if you could show that you can do it in 1 minute, then I'll have faith that you can do it in 90 minutes. And I might have more time to do your 90-minute one because I really want you to make your next one and get paid like $10 million for it. So I'll help you do that. But I do recommend doing the short and having it be at least related. It doesn't have to be proof of concept, but having at least like the world of what don't do a horror short and then be like, I have this really sad movie I want to do. Like, don't confuse the people, like, give them the package that they can invest in you as a filmmaker.
Flor?
Sure. I mean, I echo what everyone has said. And it's funny because I will be honest, I think last week I was like, I'm done with shorts. I'm not producing any more shorts.
Every week for 5 years.
Yeah, and it's because they're really challenging.
They're hard.
They're really challenging to do. There's a challenge to telling a feature-length story, and there is a real challenge about condensing something to under 21 minutes. And they're expensive, and there aren't a lot of platforms, and there aren't a lot of grants or resources for them. You're not really making money on them. They're risky. But then, of course, there's the joy of filmmaking. And I think I went from like, I'm never going to do a short again, to then another short coming across my desk and being like, I really want to do this. And I think it's because it really engages you with your craft. I think there's a focus on like directors and writers and actors in their craft and what a short can do for them. But I think as a producer too, I learn on every single project. Every single film is such its own unique environment. And even when you're working with the same people, there's new challenges. And as a producer, I have to grow too. And I have to engage with the craft in different ways and how to tell stories in different ways. So I probably will never stop doing shorts. Even, somewhere down the line, hopefully I can call up somebody and be like, hey, I want, do you have money to do this? And like, they'll fund me. But I think it's about, the process work and just knowing that you really can get a lot done in a short because you're not spending, as much time on it. Or maybe you are, but I think with every project, you just learn so much. And I think it's important to just keep engaged and keep yourself engaged in the work.
And without adding too much more time, because I know you're trying to wrap it up, but it's like kind of combining what they were saying. It's like over time, I've started to look at shorts a little differently in the fact that like they can serve great purpose for a feature. It can serve, just like you're saying, a standalone and be just a creative thing, but don't bite off more than you can chew. And it's like, yes, have it be in the tone, in the world, like Rhianon was saying, if you want it, if you're using it to help you with the feature. But it's like, you can literally do a 2-minute, 3 or 5-minute short over a weekend with talented friends. A lot of times people try to do the big epic short, which if you're trying to do that, then yes, just do the feature, but have very few actors, one location, make it bold, make it simple, push boundaries, and then you can then it can kind of serve all these purposes without spending so much time fundraising, so much time trying to make it when that could be going towards the feature film. And, as Flor had mentioned, like, you don't do them and then sometimes you go back to do one. I did a short film with friends, 1-day shoot, a guy in a table, surreal. I just did it to be creative. We did it at the beginning of the year to like start off the year with a creative project. I worked with a female DP who I'd been wanting to work with, who was super talented. It was surreal and trippy. So we ended up playing like Fantasia, which I'd never played before. So it was just this great experience. So you can always, keep it small and creative. It's just, I think people try to bite off more than they can chew sometimes with a short film. And that's not necessarily the approach. And I've tried to like change that thought process.
Yeah. It could be a good exercise to be creative with friends with like very low risk.
Yeah, that's great. And, I'm gonna close it up, but I feel like, this is an ellipsis or whatever, like a dot, dot, dot. Like, hopefully, maybe we can come together again at some point. I know your lives are so incredibly busy, but I feel like this is a conversation that should keep going. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do a written interview or something like that in the future. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me and being a part of our festival this year. It's been a real honor, and I'll continue to keep elevating your work and, keep me in the loop about upcoming projects. I'd love to, share it. And thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
so
you,
much for
Becca, for
everything you've
providing
been
the
doing for
platform.
Midwives
Of
too, so.
course. Oh,
Yeah.
and then one last thing I want to say. I've had many emerging filmmakers come to me. Oh, well, one in particular I'm thinking about, and she's just like, there's only like dude producers, like, or guy male producers. And I was like, are you kidding me? I've like interviewed so many women producers, but it's so weird. Like, I don't know why, like, some people don't know that women producers exist, or not that you don't exist, but you're not as accessible. So the reason why I wanted to do this panel was to show it's possible to contact, women or non-binary producers and, collaborate. So yeah, like I think we achieved, people knowing who you are, and obviously they do, but some people probably for local reasons have difficulty. But yeah, so thank you, and you have a great rest of your day, and
too.
I'll be in touch about future projects.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Rebecca.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.